And good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Silmarillion Film Project. This is session number 33 of Season 6. It is indeed our Season 6 finale, the final episode of Season 6. We have come to the end of the Beren and Luthien season, which has been a long-anticipated and much-enjoyed season. And speaking of much anticipated, tonight we have our what has become traditionally our final episode of each season, which is our music episode, where we discuss the original music that has been composed for the score of Season 6 of Silmfilm. And we are joined this year by a pair of composers. We have, of course, Philip Menzies, who has been with us for years, since the beginning. You began in Season 1, right?
Yeah, it did.
Yes, Phil's been composing with us for some time, and Phil's going to be our primary help in sort of walking us through things here. We also have Evan Langford, who is new on the team. Evan, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Good. First, tell me a little bit more about how you got involved with this. I'm going to give you a little bit more time because people have heard from Philip, already for years. But tell us about how you joined in.
Yeah, I just hopped on board this season. This is my first season of Silmfilm. I discovered about the project through the Friendship Onion podcast. Mm-hmm. The episode that you guested on, I was on a very long car ride, and I decided I would just jump straight in. And then getting into Beren and Luthien and figuring out that you guys had just started and you were looking for people in the script department. So I jumped into that first, and then kind of circumstantially got connected to Phil through music, which is a passion of mine. And I've been really happy to get to work on some things with him.
Awesome. Well, it's been fun. Been fun having you involved. So before we get too deep in, just a couple announcements. I want to remind folks as we get closer now to our fall Moot season. These are the Moots. These 6 Moots are the ones that we have registration currently open for. Cascade Moot in Portland in September, our first time to the Pacific Northwest. Middle Moot in Iowa, back in Iowa on the 14th of October, and then New England Moot back up here in New Hampshire by me on the 21st of October. Out to Denver for Mountain Moot at the beginning of November. Our second time to Denver, and our first time ever down to New Orleans, Louisiana for Bayou Moot on December 2nd. And then Orlando, Florida again for Sunshine Moot. This time in February, moving that a little bit back in the year we were in, March last year. So those are coming up. And of course, Philip, looking forward to Osmoot again. Osmoot is planned for the end of January. Registration not quite open yet, which is why it's not on the list here yet. But we are coming ever closer to opening registration for Osmoot, which was so much fun last year, and really looking forward to getting down there to Australia again. Come summertime, when it finally gets to summer, I'll be able to come down.
Yes, well, you don't want it to be too severe a summer. It can get pretty hot.
This year I will be ready. I'll be mentally prepared. I was theoretically prepared, but it really was not enough last time.
and this time it's only about like an hour to an hour and a half away from me.
Yeah, that's right.
Whereas before I had to travel 10 hours or so to get to Brisbane. So yep, I'm all keen and ready to jump in. And our Tolkien Fellowship that was involved in the Moot has been meeting every month, and they're right on board with the organisation, and they're talking about every month. So trying to get the word out, and so there's a lot of hype starting to build.
It is marvelous. Yeah, I am so excited. So excited to see folks again, and to have another wonderful event. So yeah, it's going to be the end of January. So again, the registration not quite open for that yet, but end of January is what we're looking at for Osmoot there. All right, so music. So just to contextualize for folks who are unfamiliar with this episode, with this kind of episode that we do at the end of every season. So we've been doing during the course of the season, if you've been listening along to season 6, you will know that there have been a number of occasions on which we have said, "Oh yeah, we always knew this was going to be a pretty music intensive season." We were even down to casting when we were like, we need people who can, people who can sing and dance, for these roles. That's really a requirement. I think it's one of the reasons in the end why we ended up casting Alan Sisto in this season. Really. That's a joke. But though I've seen Alan dance, and it's not as bad as you might think. But anyway, we do compose the original music for this. I say we. I just casually toss that out like it's a thing that we do. Again, Philip has been engaged from the beginning. Evan joining him this year, and it's really delightful. So what we're going to be talking about here today is especially looking at some of the themes that would be integrated into a full. Of course, we don't have a full soundtrack for all 13 episodes of the season, but we do have what Philip has always focused on is first when we have individual songs, like actual musical numbers, especially with people singing and stuff like that. He's been composing and producing those, but also thinking about themes that can be woven in to the soundtrack as we move forward. So we've had many different kinds of themes, often character themes. Some characters will have their own themes. We have some more thematic themes, that is, a musical theme that'll be associated with a particular idea, like a fall, for instance. And this came up a lot. Was that a season 2 or a season 3 theme, Phil? It was back then.
Season 2. It was season 2. We had about 3 or 4 different thematic themes, if you want to call it that. Doom was one of those. Purpose was one of them, because the elves it wasn't just about the elves. We did have themes for the Vanya, the Noldor, and the Teleri, but we wanted to go beyond that and to actually show the journey that those characters made during that season. And one of the important ones was that some people were going to fall. Some people were going to discover their purpose along the journey, and that was particularly relevant for the Teleri and why they dropped out along the way. And Doom was an important one, and that's going to come to the forefront again when we get to the Turin season. So I'm looking forward to tubular bells all the way through that season.
Right. This season brought to you by the tubular bells.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it is really fun to think about as we kind of move forward. This kind of sort of library of themes and musical concepts that we've been building is something that we are developing and growing and kind of combining in really interesting ways, right? So I mean, it's a lot of fun to be able to kind of hear that and remember, like, okay, this is you can hear hints of the Melkor theme or the Sauron theme integrated into that. Oh, and here's and there are elements of the fall theme as well. And so these can be combined with other character themes or come in at other moments in order to kind of work that through. So it was one of the, back in season 1, we did themes. You did themes for each of the Valar. Right, and those have been really, really important kind of templates that we've been able to move forward, and often I know that, times have come up either like a character or sort of a moment in the story where you're drawing upon some of those Valar themes, or it'll kind of we'll get an intervention of the themes of one of the Valar in the middle of one of those other pieces and stuff. So the way that these musical concepts are getting woven together is becoming more and more rich, more and more complex the more seasons we get, and that's been a great deal of fun.
That's actually happened a lot in this season as we go through. And the game tonight for everyone listening is pick that theme when you're actually when you're listening to something. If you've listened to my music, hopefully you've listened to it. You may recognize one of my older themes that is woven into this particular piece of the story. So we'll point those out as we go through. But I was actually quite surprised at how many older themes were coming to the fore when I was imagining a scene.
Right.
I was getting the feeling, oh look, I need to include this old theme and then weave in this other theme before I actually get to the theme that we're concentrating on for this piece of music, and we'll talk
Yeah.
about them individually when we get to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when you said all the Valor themes, it was
Not quite all.
most.
Most. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and tonight will be about filling in some of those gaps as well.
Nice. Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to let you. So we don't have. We just have a couple. Like so, each for each of our slides tonight is just going to present sort of one of your themes. So, Philip would love for you to kind of walk us through both what's going on in the track that we're going to be listening to, and also kind of where it came from, how it fits, how it kind of emerged from the story that we've been discussing in the episode. If there are particular moments in episodes, all that kind of thing. So tell us about the Lord of Waters theme.
Yes. So this one picked up on the last season. Last season when I did the Harrod theme, which was the frame story.
Yes.
And it was about 10 minutes long, and it covered all of the major elements of the frame story. On the boat journey, suddenly I had this and we wanted to show Gandalf moving from Gondor to the south by boat. And suddenly I was hit with, hey, this is the first time that the story has ever gone to the ocean,
Right.
apart from way back in season 1 and 2.
Yeah, exactly.
And I hadn't really fleshed out Elmo's theme, so I went back to that one first of all and fleshed it out even more in this particular one. So it's not particularly relevant to this season. It is a bit of a catch up, but I am slowly. So there's this one, and following is Vana, believe it or not.
Right.
Who's ever heard of Vana?
Well, it's it's very important, though. The Elmo theme, right, is increasingly relevant, right, as we're obviously going to need it a great deal when we get to Gondolin and Tuor, right? We just had it in, was it season 5? Was season 5, was that when we got to the founding of Gondolin? Yeah, the dreams and the
dreams. I have always planned a little piece of Finrod and Turgon's dream, which would feature.
That was 4?
Which would.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
It was lit.
That's 4.
Yep. So yeah, it will be important. And I think what I've done with this is to actually highlight how it will be relevant in the coming seasons, because we're going to be seeing the subtle influences of Elmo in the world. He's not going to appear until we get to the Tuor scene, and that's going to be extremely dramatic. But before then, there are all these hints along the way that Elmo is still there. His presence is there through the water. So what I've done with this one is to take us on a journey, and taking from the text, talking about how his presence is in the smallest dewdrop, the trickles and the rivulets leading to the streams, leading to the ocean. So that's the journey that that music makes. But then once we get there, I thought, what better than to go and revisit the story of Ossie and Ewanen, and to flesh out that story, because that was a really important part of film in season 1. So I thought, what better way than to highlight that particular story. You may find some of the sounds in it a little bit disconcerting, because I have in fact tried to use as many water-based instruments as I can.
Mm.
So the strange sound you hear at the beginning is actually a waterphone. And a waterphone is like a circular instrument with a base that holds water and these metal chimes going up the sides. Now it's often used in horror because it gives a really weird sort of almost scream. But I
Okay.
want to include that. I also included instruments like I think I noted it down, glass harmonica and instruments that brought about the idea of reflections as well. So they're the
Okay.
sorts of things that I'm trying to get the audience to experience in this piece of music.
Okay. All right. Well, let's listen through it, and then you can talk a little bit more about what was going
Yep.
on in the midst of it there. Whoop. Sorry, don't know what happened there. Where were we? We were up at Elmo. I don't know why it stopped. Hang on. Excellent. Excellent. I loved the. So I'm guessing that the part of the theme that we were getting there, sort of in the last segment after the Alse and Unin section, that's going to be like the Elmo Rising from the Sea part. Like that's going to be the sort of the musical centerpiece of that moment, right?
Yeah, it will be, and it's the whole thing is based around just 4 notes. That is, sorry, there you go, and held on and sustained. So you hear that all the way through in like right from the beginning. It's done on like glockenspiel and really fine, delicate. But then we get the brass coming in later on, and I really wanted to the idea of the horns that Olmo blows. I forget the name of the Maya that made the horns. Sulimo? No. Sorry. Haven't got it. But yes. I wanted to get across that idea of his horns being very delicate and very majestic. Yeah, I might have gone overboard with some of that percussion in the middle there.
I like the percussion, actually. I was going to say, especially during like the Ase section, I was loving the percussion in the Ase section. Yeah. That felt really right. There's a sense, of course, in which like percussion heavy water music seems a little bit odd in one sense, right? But with Ase in particular, that that sense of like the rhythmic pounding, like Ase is about the rhythmic pounding, right? Like the rhythmic pounding of the ocean on the shore, with violence and often destruction, right? So I love that, actually. I was going to say that really jumped out to me. But
another feature. Sorry, go on, Evan.
I was just going to say what I love about this piece is the tempo that you have running through that first third section. It gives it this very flowing quality, but you break into quarter beats and half beats to give it more of that temperamental feel, which I really appreciate in this piece.
And for those attentive listeners, there is also a homage in there to Holst, the planets because
Oh,
in my it was that first section with the oboes. The oboes were doing this. That's straight out of Neptune. And I just wanted to put that homage in there because in like the first time I read the Silmarillion, I drew a comparison straight away between Olmo and Neptune, and I feel that he's the closest in Tolkien's Valar compared to the Roman and Greek pantheon of gods. So there is that little homage in there.
that's fun. I like that. That's good. I didn't get that because I don't know of the planets. I don't. That's not one of the ones I know best. So I didn't catch it. But
and the yeah, and the other feature that I thought I'd draw attention to was Ewanin with the long harp glissando, indicating her hair. So I made that a feature whenever she is in there, and you can even like even if we do get to Numenor. And do the bits of Numenor that the Rings of Power have not done. That will be a major feature in those sea voyages, particularly when they're around the coastlines, and you'll see the seaweed in the water.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that too. I was there are several. I mean, as I was going through. One of the things that I was imagining was the different kinds of moments when some of these themes would definitely arise. Numenor with Uinen obviously is going to be. In fact, I would even think that when we get to like the central Numenor theme in film, that it would be. I would think that even that would be connected in a really like the Uinen theme. I think would be of all of the like other major themes, right? Uinen, maybe just a tiny little bit of doom, little touch of fall here and there, but yeah, no, I think that's. Yeah, can you tell that I don't compose music, but I do cook, and so that's kind of how I tend to think of these things. It probably doesn't actually work the way I think it does, but anyway, yeah. So that's great. The other thing that I was thinking of course, is that I'm assuming it's the earlier, the first third of that piece. That we would be getting presumably during the like dream sequences and things with Finrod and Turgon, right?
Yes, exactly. But I would also throw in a little bit of Irmo as well.
Yes, of course.
For dreams and visions, because even though it says specifically Olmo visited them, I think any time that we do dreams and visions of any kind, that we need to include a little bit of Irmo's theme in there, and it really brings him into the fore where he's such a background Valar all the time. I think that there might be one scene in this current season that may use a little bit of that. Does Beren, when he goes from Doriath to Nargothrond, does he go past the gates of Sirion? Marie.
Well, unfortunately, I don't have a map to.
Yep.
I'm just teasing
I've
Marie.
got the map covered.
So yes, he crosses by boat at the right above the gates of Sirion there.
And I presume we'll have some aerial shots of him, the gates of Sirion in the foreground, and him sort of crossing.
I have to imagine we'll establish the scene using that very unique location, because there's only 3 ways to cross the river to the west of Doriath, and one of them is a ferry. Before you get to the gates of Sirion, obviously you wouldn't want to cross right there, but
right.
But it is nearby. So yeah, I think we would probably want to see that this season.
Yep. So, so now that I've fleshed out Olmo, I can see that he little hints of him will appear in future seasons.
It was funny. So I was going to ask this, but let me say in advance that I'm not sure it's a totally fair question, or I know it's a fair question, but I'm not sure. It seems actually perhaps less relevant than I thought. My first thought was, would there be a special adaptation of that early sequence, like a special River Syrian theme? I think of how Tolkien emphasizes the sacred River Syrian and the but at the same time, but then the reason I paused in thinking about that was, but at the same time, the River Syrian actually plays very little role in the stories. Like, it's conceptually important in the Silmarillion. Like, it's talked about as if it were really important. There are moments when it comes up, like the Isle of Tol Sirion is right there, right? So, I mean, we have the river there. And we get to... There'll be some issues with, like, the source of Sirion and everything. But really, the river itself doesn't feature in the narratives all that often. At least not as often as would seem to be justified by the way they talk about the river. But anyway, that seems to me, again, if trying to capture that idea of the veins of Middle Earth, right, in that passage that you were quoting in the video there. And the way in which, Ulmo is in touch with, in more direct touch with Middle Earth than the other Valar because of his connection through the streams and rivers. And the River Syrian is the heart of that, and really talked about in this really special way. But anyway,
I think that is a really interesting and clever way of bringing the audience's mind back to that. So when we're actually trying to deal with the power of Ulmo leaving the river Syrian later in the story, the theme will be missing. So I think having the theme every time anyone crosses the Syrian or travels on it is important, to just get that idea of the music of the Ainur is still echoing through the water.
Yeah, that sense in which, because the way that the Syrian tends to be referred to is as this, like, direct link to Ulmo and the power of Ulmo, right? You think of those references of when the sources of the River Syrian are marred, right? And, like, Ulmo's power thereafter withdraws, from the land. So yeah, a musical sense of the presence of Ulmo when we're near almost any river, but especially near the River Syrian, I think would be really, really powerful and really appropriate. Okay, cool. Let's look at the next one. So our next one is Vana. You mentioned that you were going to do a Vana theme. So tell me what apart from the desire to fill in the blanks, was there something in season 6 or in sort of some of the recent stuff that was happening that made you think, made you want to go back to Vana?
Well, it was about filling in the gaps, and as you know, not many people know. Only the people who went to attended Osmoot, saw my presentation, and my presentation because I did the first part of the Ainulindalë, I had to actually cement all of the Valar themes, which I had not done. So I had to cement the Vana theme, and it was such a pretty little thing that I went and did this. It's only very short, but we don't know very much about Vana. The one of my pieces of music I will actually go back and adjust, and that is the Hiding of Valinor, which has the Rising of the Sun scene. So what I will do and go back, I had when the sun rose over Path Galen, I had Yavanna's theme playing, and showing deer and foxes and those sorts of things. The animals have come out in the morning light. I think I will add a little section of Vana's theme to show the blooming of the flowers for the first time on Path Galen.
Right.
But other than that, I think this is another situation of whenever you want to draw people's attention to the beauty of this scene because of the flowers, let's just play a little bit of Vana here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that occurs to me, of course, is that there's one place where the drawing attention to the beauty of nature and the blooming of flowers is going to come up quite regularly, and that's every time Luthien steps onto the stage, right? So, I mean, were you thinking in some ways about the relationship between the Vana theme and the Luthien concepts?
I wasn't necessarily, but I think that's perfectly that's great. That is great in interleaving that, or just if it, because I was reading the script outline, particularly for the meeting of Beren and Luthien,
Yes.
and it takes place scene after scene after scene, of course intercut by other scenes to other places, and so their meeting actually takes place over a long part of the episode.
Right.
So
Right.
I would imagine a part of that episode would be like just even if like when they have their picnic, sitting among the flowers, you could just play Vana's theme at that time.
Yeah. 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 I would. Yeah. Yeah. It would be interesting to think of interplay between the two concepts. The Luthien. I'm thinking, Marie. I'm thinking about what we've called the Luthien effect, right? How like Luthien comes onto the scene and everybody gets happy and flowers bloom, right? You know, like so you know, the thing which is going to be most dramatically, which is going to return most dramatically, right at the healing of the winter of Thingol, and then finally at the in Mandos. But in any case, thinking about the relationship between the Luthien effect, the effect that Luthien has even on the natural environment, and of Vana herself and the power of Vana, right? Because it's not like, I mean, they're both associated with blooming flowers, but it's not like that's the same, right? Nor is it exactly that Luthien is like merely subordinated to Vana in some sense, that she's like some kind of subset of the flower theme or something like that. There would be a different relationship between them. Anyway, I'm just
as we go on, one thing that I've sort of got the feeling of is that elf magic, in a way, is channeling Valar powers. And you'll see that in these ones, and yeah, I think that's entirely legitimate, that Luthien could be channeling the power of, like, may not be her innate power, but it is a gift from Vana onto her because of who she is. So yeah, I like the idea of channeling.
Yeah, inviting at least a sort of a contemplation on the part of, you know, of our viewers and everything, just to kind of be juxtaposing those two things, Luthien and Vana, and inviting people to think about that. Anyway, okay. Anything else you want to give for context before we begin? I know sometimes in your Valar themes, you've established some of them in a musical relationship with the themes of other Valar that they have either a familial relationship with, or like the sibling ones, or the husband and wife pairings and stuff. Sometimes you have their themes kind of musically connected to each other in some ways. Were there any of the other Valar themes that you were kind of working with or connecting to in the Vana theme?
I did have Yavanna's theme on my mind, as they are sisters, and that was one thing that I sort of established. Had to establish the sibling relationships in the creation of the Aina. So that was one thing that I had in mind. I can't recall now whether I actually put in particular reference to Yavanna, but it's I think you'll find that there is a sort of a similarity between the two, and that they have a similar feel, and they're not completely different from each other.
Right.
So
Good. All right. Well, let's play this, and then we can talk about that a little more.
okay.
That is lovely. That is lovely. That may be one of the most purely lovely of the Valar themes that, and very fittingly, but I thought that was gorgeous.
Mm, mm. Thanks. Yeah. There are a few things that I sort of want to point out. I mean, the text that I included is almost the only text we have about Valar.
Yeah, it was the only
Vana.
reference.
The only, I think the only other reference we have is it with Muriel, who laid down in the gardens of Vana. So we know that she has gardens. That's the only other piece of information. So there was a reference there to her footsteps and to walking. So if you listen to that, it had a very sort of deliberate, regular beat going on with it. Just to imagine her sort of just walking slowly and smoothly across the area of flowers. Another thing that I wanted to do in the later sections there is that the instruments sort of took over from one another. It started off with the flutes. I think the flutes and the piccolos, and then the melody was picked up by the oboes, and then it was picked up by the clarinets, and then it was picked up by the bassoon. I kept it in the woodwind as well. I didn't want to bring any brass into it, but I just wanted to get that impression of they're such short-lived, and then another one comes, and then another one comes, and they're all different, and that's why you had that sort of overplay of different instruments picking up the theme at different times. And the image at the end, yes, I wanted to show that, yep, the dandelion, the post flower, to show that, yep, this is all part of the cycle of life with flowers.
Right. Yeah, I really like that concept. I loved my one of my favorite moments was when the oboe came in, actually, because it was sort of up very light and airy with the flutes and piccolos at the beginning, and then when we got that the more resonant sound with the oboe, and yet still so playing in that sort of deeper and more resonant way, that same kind of theme, that was one of my favorite moments. I also really liked those I was really interested in the little bits, right? The little interventions of the, what sound like, birds, or those little, I don't even know how to describe it.
I think that might have been the violin, just in the technique of the violin. So there was no real violin play, but I've got sophisticated enough equipment to be able to replicate. So it was like, I think it was a bit staccato. I think I used a pizzo effect. So or a very short, it might have been a down bow, just so the notes played and comes off very quickly. And once again, that just gives the idea of sort of walking almost on tiptoes, and it's very light stepping as she goes. The notes weren't legato. They didn't hold on. It was bum, 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 bum. So very, very short. That effect was intentional, to get that lightness and hopping and almost skipping through the garden feel.
Yeah, and it made me think of, like, the sort of occasional and almost unpredictable, like, bird sound, or like the image that was on the screen when I was first really noticing it was a bee buzzing around from flower to flower. And so that was another thing. I was just, it seemed almost like a kind of external intervention, in a sense, like outside the flowing of the flower cycles, right, as you were describing them there. Very cool. Well, that, I think, will be a very useful theme. And Evan, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say that this piece, and I don't know if this is intentional, but it very much reminds me of Howard Shore's The Shire theme. Those two pieces really hold hands for me in the best possible way. And I think it is those strings primarily that call back to those memories, but it is very Shire-esque in its theme.
That's right. I do recall now, in terms of Vana's theme is very close in starting. It starts with the same three notes as the Shire. And with Vana, I think so it has that same run of three notes at the beginning. Which I think Bear McCreary also did with some of the Harfoot theme as well. You might not realize it, but one reason that it felt so familiar is because he used that run of three notes that we get in the Shire theme. Right.
Yeah, very fun. I think this is a really useful theme. Modasenza was saying that we could feature this piece when we get to the restoration of the Shire after the scouring, in like 35 years or so, when we get there. But certainly that idea of freshness and growth, and the restoration of beauty. Another place that I think would be really powerful for that is the Crown of the King statue at the crossroads, in the Two Towers. That's a really important flowers blooming moment, right? And I think that could be, again, I'm thinking about the way in which the kinds of music that we would be playing for, we're just about at the dawnless day, right? And we're in Ithilien, moving closer to Morgul Vale, and then all of a sudden, right, the flowers there that Sam sees, and yeah. Oh, Isaiah, I don't know. I think it's right around the corner. I think it's I think it's right around the corner. Well, it's okay, Isaiah. You might live to see it. Anyway, all right, let's move. Speaking of continuing to go before we get too old, our next theme, on a totally different note, and this is the first of our themes explicitly for season 6, right? And that's our necromancy theme. So this is going to be is this going to be involved in the opening of episode 1, or only when we get to the warping and twisting of this death magic by Sauron and Thuringwethil as episode 1 goes along that we're going to be getting this?
Well, this is one of those times where I read the script for episode 1, and as I was reading the script, the music was playing in my head.
Right.
So that's actually what I've done. I have the clip begins as if we are entering episode 1 right at the very beginning, the aftermath of the Dagor Bragollach.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the context. And so I've tried to follow the scenes as much as possible with my access to artwork. So consider this as a storyboard exercise. That's the most that I could actually do in finding artwork that actually fit. There is a really weird, and so we go through the scene of the spirits of the dead elves rising, the spirit of the scout being blown away, and then Mandos actually appearing on the battlefield. So I had this picture in my head of the spirits of the elves dotting the battlefield, and the only picture I could get of spirits dotting a battlefield has this really weird blue huge spirit. I say, oh well, that's Mandos.
Right.
that's right. The most. So if it I'm sorry if it takes you really out of it, but I was going for the spirits on the battlefield look. So it was that, because that's when the concept of necromancy is introduced.
Yes.
So I wanted to tackle it right at the beginning. This is where the theme originates from. But then after I've established the theme, I then skip a little bit and we go to the sack of Minas Tirith, and then the establishment of the Well of Souls, and what Sauron and Thuringwethil are doing with the spirits of the dead elves. So I've taken the text from Morgoth's Ring, and I sort of stuck to that because nowhere in the script was there anything specifically which said this is what they're actually doing. Right. It was still very vague. So I've gone back to Tolkien on this one, and just put in this is what he wrote about necromancy.
Necromancy, yeah.
So yeah, now this is the one where points go to the person who can recognize the most number of my themes in a piece, because this is chock-a-block full of them. It was perfect.
I'm assuming, I mean, obviously Mandos has to feature fairly significant, the Namo theme, right, has to feature fairly significantly here. And
that's where the necromancy themes comes from as well. It comes from Namo.
Right. Okay, so let's see. Before we even listen, which other themes would be involved here? I would think we would be blending in some of the fall stuff as we go along from the battlefield scene towards the actual perversion. Do we get any fall stuff? No?
Nope.
No fall?
Nope. This is a really sad scene. And as I said in the music commissioning theme, right from the beginning, this season needs to be weighing in really heavily on the sorrow of the Eldar and the grief of men.
Right. Sorrow of the Eldar and the grief of men.
Which is going to be taken all the way through the season. So opening scene has those two themes and some other themes. So happy people to guess the other themes, and all the way through to the end. Hopefully people will get. And might I just say, thank you. It's had 259 views. Thank you to the 25 to 30 people who saw it all the way to the end. Because this is actually trying to tell a story. Right. It's not, and I've got to reconcile that when I put things up on YouTube. I've got to be able to say, well, I'm telling a story for Silm, but I'm also putting up something which is accessible to other people who are not part of Silm. So it had a very quick drop off when people discovered it's not what they thought it was. But this is a demonstration of the themes, that opening scene, and how the theme for necromancy was developed.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's listen. That was awesome. That was awesome. Okay, so we have lots of guesses. I was definitely hearing some of the sort of obvious ones, like the moment when the Mandos theme came in, and the moment when the Sauron theme comes in. There was let's see. Kanji was pointing out that was hearing the grief of men theme when the scout
Yes.
was dying,
Yes.
right?
Yes, that's right. Yep, the grief of men.
Yeah.
Any other suggestions?
We also had
Oath of Feanor.
the Oath of Feanor came in. Yep.
No, actually, we didn't have the Oath of Feanor. The Oath of Feanor was not in there.
No, but some of the same stuff that got used in the Oath of Feanor. The Doom. The Doom stuff. The Doom theme. Somehow. There's something that was
Yes.
the one that has the Dies Irae in it. I think that's the Doom theme, right? I don't know.
Well, I actually popped a little bit of the Noldor theme into
The Noldor, okay.
The Noldor. So it started off with the Noldor theme because that's the opening set.
Yeah.
It's a Noldor settlement.
Yeah.
So that really sad ba 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 ba
Yeah.
ba 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 is a really sad rendition of the Noldor theme. Then it moved into the sorrow of the Eldar when we saw all the dead elves on the ground. Then it moved into the grief of men when we zoomed in on the human, and then we had the introduction of this three note motif, which is taken from Mandos's theme. So I think it was a so Mandos's theme is just without the breaks in it. Just without the break. Da 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 da. So I've just taken each one of those separately, and I wanted to associate that with the elvish spirits. They're under his judgment, and indicates those elvish spirits. And also when the scout was being blown away, had the gift of a Luvatar.
Oh, I missed that one. Yeah.
Which is exactly the same theme that we had for the awakening of men.
Right. Oh,
So
yeah,
really
no, that's
important
great.
to use them in both of those instances.
That's great. I missed that one. So the thing that I really liked about them, those three beat, the bom 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 bom, that repeat. As you said, it was the Mandos theme sort of slowed down and separated, right? Kind of made more ponderous in that way. But it also was reminding me of the Elvish tritone. Like the I know it wasn't the same three notes, but the group of the grouping of three being repeated
together,
like
yes.
that. Yeah, was the sort of the pattern of it was making, but sort of located, like down as low as it was I was, because it was right in the time when Mandos, when we were focusing on the choice of the of Deadway, right, whether or not to go into the West or not.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. So yes, I was using contra tubas and contra trombones, as well as normal tubas and trombones. So I was really adding a higher level of bass there with those ponderous notes. But it wasn't until the question was raised of what happens if we refuse your summons, that was the instance when the necromancy theme was introduced. Because it's only the elves who refuse the call who are subject to necromancy.
Right.
So that was a point, and I think that was a I think I might have put it as a cello playing that one in particular. If I can just find that there. Yep, that's right. Sorry, can't read a viol clef. It must be this. So this is now the necromancy theme, but it still has the bomb, bomb, bomb going all the way through it. So I had to come up with a different theme that have that backing of these are the dead, they're dead elves, they're dead elves, they're dead
elves. Right, exactly, exactly. So, so you have the Mandos theme basically running straight through the necromancy theme almost all the way in that way. But I mean, it's altered, right?
Yes.
And
yes,
the idea is that it's slowed and separated, right?
Yep.
The Mandos theme. I like
exactly.
this.
Mandos is our one link to the dead and death. So that was why I felt that he needed to be intrinsically connected with necromancy. And it's a perversion of
right.
his purpose.
Right.
This piece has such narrative movement.
Yeah.
That's why it's my favorite out of everything that you've produced. And what it makes me think of is at the end of the season, as Baron and Luthien are being summoned before Mandos, that theme is the association with this person, this situation that they're about to walk into, and the investment on that with that uncertainty for the eventual payoff, I think is beautiful.
Yeah.
Some of the other effects that I had, particularly in the final section, with the taking of Tol Sirion, I concentrated a lot on the brass instruments to give it to give it that gravity. But once we moved into the Well of Souls, I then switched over to almost exclusively strings, and I had in my mind the Sorcerer's Apprentice. And what I'm imagining here is the bows going dun, 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 going furiously, and there's nothing smooth or elegant about how they're playing, but they're really putting their arms into those bow movements. So that's what I'm imagining while those final bits are while that main bit around the Well of Souls is going. Because I'm getting that sense of sorcery that we get in the Sorcerer's Apprentice. So that was a little bit of my modeling going on there.
Yeah.
That's... right at the very end, you picked up the Sauron theme. Da ba ba da da. This is and I have talked about this before, and I think we joked about this with Bear McCreary, which was I've held off on using the semitone rise. This is the first time that I've used the semitone rise, and it's played by the violins. Right at the end, we get the and then we get by the violins over the top of it. And because this is the first time that we've actually seen Sauron using power to dominate others. And all through the Lord of the Rings movies, and that motif is used by Howard Shore in the Lord of the Rings movies. I think it was used particularly well in The Desolation of Smaug, with all of that ring stuff that Bilbo was going through with when he was entering that relationship with the ring. We got a lot of that. Those sorts of sounds, and that semitone rise to me is the will of Sauron. That's what I've subconsciously consciously associated that semitone rise with the will of Sauron. And before now, we've never seen Sauron exerting his will through power. This is the first time. So we've now got the introduction, except for the Harrod, because that was Sauron in the Third Age.
Right.
I was able to use it then because that's the Sauron that we know. But this is Sauron in the first time that he's moving into this type of warfare.
Excellent. And so on the one hand, it's obviously we're still a long ways away from the Ring of Power and the real sort of the fuller flowering of this whole thematic concept for Sauron. And yet I think we're going to have opportunities in the coming couple seasons to begin seeing that more. I mean, as one of the things that I think is one of the things that I'm hoping, and here perhaps I'm tipping my hand a little bit, but I mean, I think it's after this, and in really as we begin to answer the question, which does not get answered in the published Silmarillion, namely, what is Sauron up to after the Beren and Luthien story? Right, he just vanishes from the narrative. This is really the moment when I think he's going to be beginning to set up on his own. Like, he's done coordinating with Morgoth now and is going to be working on setting up, or at least maybe not totally done, but anyway, he's getting out of the business of being Sauron's Morgoth's lieutenant rather, and is going to be setting up on his own more and more. And so the opportunity to see him asserting his will and building things, building his own dominion more and more is something I think, even though with that we're not going to get to the Ring of Power for a while, seeing him doing this kind of thing. What I'm imagining down the road, right? The Ring of Power is kind of a desperate expedient on Sauron's part. Like it's a risky plan, which he knew at the time was a risky plan, right? I mean, you're rolling the dice when you're pouring some of your own essence into a physical object like that. You do it for a reason, right? I mean, there's supposed to be payoff for that, right? But it's a risk. It's a risk, and he wouldn't have done it if he didn't need to, right? And so I think there's what we need to be showing between his defeat by Luthien and the Celebrimbor moment is him progressively asserting his will more and more, and then eventually that will is going to be checked. Like, he's going to come up on something that he can't overcome on his own, and that he needs to weight the decks for, right? That he needs to really go. That's going to convince him to take that final expedient to say, okay, the Ring of Power thing, there's some risk involved, but it's worth it, right? But I have to do it because it's not working for me elsewise. So the slow build towards that moment is where I see Sauron, what I see Sauron starting. But the very earliest stages of it in this, in the story as we've been adapting it, is right there in the Well of Souls, right? As we call that like the alpha version of the Ring of Power, basically, And so anyway, love that. Love the way that you were integrating that. And I am just loving the whole narrative thing. We've talked about this kind of stuff, right? We've talked about how, but most of the things that we've done, that you've done and we've discussed in previous seasons have been isolated themes, right? But the way you're bringing things together, I mean, that was beginning to feel like a soundtrack, and that's really exciting.
Well, take some pointers from Bear McCreary, because I just think of the scene where the Númenóreans ride into the village, and you get Arondir's theme, and followed by Galadriel's theme, followed by followed by the Númenor theme, followed by the Faithful theme, and it's like they're all just bang, 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 one after the other.
Right. Yeah. No, it was great. I would love to, man, I was having thoughts. I was having notions of just wanting to see more, like how we can, I'm like, little storyboarding, little soundtracking, little audio drama. We could do a thing here, but
We'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah, it would be fun. It would be fun. All right, but let's move forward. We get to Beren and Luthien now. So this is the Beren and Luthien meeting thing. So tell us about this piece now. Is this another sort of storyboardish moment?
A little bit. This is, and I was thinking of Beren's going through the girdle, but then when I had a look at the script outlines, I realized that happened at the very end of episode 3, and there was all that stuff with him seeing visions of Barahir at the time, and it was all very weird. I couldn't quite get my head around it musically, so started from the beginning of this opening of the scene, opening of the episode 4, where Beren is regaining consciousness, waking up in Dorith. He's through the girdle. So yes, it is very much storyboarding. As I said, according to the script outline, I think we only have a script outline. We don't have a full script for this one. What I've done here plays out over multiple scenes, and in the middle of the scene, it'll go away, and the Thingol will be playing chess with someone in Menegroth, and then it'll go over to the Noldor somewhere else, and so. This is a sort of an amalgamation of a number of scenes. It's very rough at this stage. So this was hot off the press this morning, but I don't feel that it's in any way completed. I haven't put any text on it at all. The pictures say it all, because this is the most heavily artistic work in every amateur and professional Tolkien artist has depicted this scene in some form. So I had a wealth of artwork to actually draw from. So I've just hobbled together some artwork, but pretty much I wanted to get the waking up, the regaining consciousness. I'm in a very strange place. I don't know where I am. It's very dreamlike. We're in Fairy. So this is trying to get across the idea of he's in Fairy, then introduce the sounds of flute in the distance, there's piping in the distance. He goes to investigate, sees them, and then the first meeting and the chasing after. I have brought in some older themes in this one, so if you can guess these themes as well, credit to you.
Okay.
That's good. But this is by no means polished. I'll probably take it down shortly afterwards and polish it up significantly.
Okay. All right. Let's have a listen. Excellent. Walk me through the kind of different movements of that scene, because it
Yeah.
I could definitely feel that there were, you know, very sort of clear kind of scenes in that. I could sort of feel the narrative, but I'd just love to hear you kind of talk us through that a little bit.
Yes, yeah. I really established my feel of what Elvendon, feels like.
Right.
Back
That
in
fairy element.
back in the Light of the West, when we had the three verses, the human verse, the dwarvish verse, and the elvish verse. And how I've done that is I've had like random notes being played by different instruments at different places, but I've also kept it very much along the same lines as the Athrobeth. Now, in the Athrobeth, if you remember, we had the structure of Lydian structure.
The Lydian
So we
structure,
go
yeah, I do
from a
remember that.
major to another major. No, sorry, that's probably a bad one. So sorry, that's probably a. So just from that major to major. So that's what I've done, that rocking back and forth again from the major to another major chord, and adding in some sevenths and seconds and all sorts of interesting notes to give it some extra color. So it's probably very familiar. If you go back and have a listen to the Athrobeth, you'll say, "Oh yeah, I can hear there's similarity there." I also had those random notes playing in the Athrobeth as well around the Elvish parts. So you have that initial sort of, I'm like in a dreamlike state, waking up. When he starts to have a look around the forest, you'll hear some notes which is just the beginning of the Teleri theme. Now, I've never developed a Sindar theme. They've remained the Teleri theme, but that's just the what was that? I've just started with that bop 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 bop, and just little fragments of that all the way. So we're in a Sindar Teleri forest.
Well, and the whole Shoreland Pipers thing from the Teleri is certainly fit very much with. I noticed with the Dairon, with the piping that she was dancing to, clearly.
Yes. So I did a variation of Words of Mockery for that piping tune. So, but just popped it into a major key, and it fit really, really well. So he's still playing that song. He's still in love with Luthien.
Right. Right.
So
That's fun.
yes, yes. As you see what I say about I've drawn on lots of older themes from my works, and then of course so I wanted to distinguish, have all that music going on, but then you probably noticed in the scene where it definitely shows that Luthien is looking at Burren. He's
Yes.
behind her. She's turned to look. That's the first time that they've acknowledged each other
Mm-hmm.
and are looking at each other. I wanted all the other music to slowly fade and have another theme come over the top of that to say this is an important moment, the first time that they look at
Yes.
each other.
Yes.
And what I've used there is actually the combination of the human and the elvish themes from the Athrobeth,
Ah.
which didn't come together in the Athrobeth. I did a long section of the elvish theme, slightly shorter, a little bit of overlap, a shorter section. Oh, actually, it started with the first half of each theme overlapped, and they're really clashing. I had people on YouTube saying the first part really sounds awful. I say, yeah, humans and elves don't mix.
Don't mix.
They
Yeah.
don't mix. But the second half, the human and elvish themes mesh very nicely together. So that's what this is, the second half of the Athrobeth theme. But I've left it hanging. I've left it hanging at that point there, and she runs off. And so we go into that very playful music at that time. The playful music is also another theme that I have used in the past. That was the evanescent lightsomeness, which
Right, of
I
course.
know, which is the joy and laughter that ends all too soon.
Yes. The the evanescent lightsomeness theme is my favorite name for a theme of all of them, for sure.
Sorry, favorite name.
Yeah, yeah, my
Really?
favorite name. But yeah, no, that's great. That's wonderful. Sort of capturing the delight of Luthien there when she's dancing and running away, which I think also has a one of the things that I think is very important about that effect. We talked a lot when we were discussing this scene about how how we reduce the potential creepiness of it, right? Like it would be really easy for the Baron and Luthien scene to look or feel creepy, right? And for her running away to be accompanied by the evanescent lightsomeness theme instead of fear or dread. Like, she's not running away because she's afraid, right? She doesn't feel under threat. There's no threat here. It's playful from the very beginning. There would have I think that the deployment of that theme would have a very strong effect on viewer response to that whole scene, which I think is really important there. Monosenzo was wondering, noted the change in key later on, and so like is that when Doom comes on to Nuviel, when the key changes?
Yeah, that was sort of I only wrote that this morning. That was a very introspective scene. There was a scene in the script outline where Luthien and Dairon were talking, and there was a bit of doubt as to what was going on. So I wanted to put in the idea of they're unsure as to exactly what is happening here.
Right.
And yeah, so it is. I've switched it from E major to B minor, which they're actually I think the same key signature. So they're very, very closely related. So it easily sort of slipped into that and makes you feel a little bit uneasy. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but then I finished that off with a full rendition of the second half of the Athrobeth theme. And once again, that combination of the Elvish and human theme together. And I've left it hanging. I'm very aware of musicians resolving music before time. A case in point, I'm not sure how many of you saw the latest live action Mulan movie.
I did, I did actually. Yeah.
Okay, and I was very interested because I know and love the music from the animation, and there are only 4 songs, but they're very recognizable songs. So I was on the lookout for where am I going to hear those themes.
Right.
So
Right.
in the
Sure.
in the scene where Mulan, the training montage, which is this time is walking up the mountain, holding the pails of water
Right.
with
Right.
arms outstretched. It's done to the opening 3 notes of Reflection, da 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 da. But it's just those 3 notes, da da da, and it just does those 3 notes over and over again as she's going up the mountain. And when she gets to the mountain, they do the big resolution of the theme. Isn't that fantastic? And I got to that point and thought, no, she's only just completed her training. This is not
Right.
you've peaked too early. You can't
Right.
resolve that theme at that point. We need it. And the song actually has two peaks. The first peak is unresolved and the second peak resolves. And that's my commentary on that movie. They shouldn't have resolved that theme at that point. They should have left it unresolved.
Right.
So that's why I've left this unresolved, because there's a long way to go.
Long way to go for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And it can then from that point just hop to a different scene completely.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, that's great. One of the things that I was just reflecting on, hearing you talk about it and listening to the theme, I just love the way in which you and your music. I mean, I love the way in which we've been doing this in film as a whole, but I love the way in which you're really keying in on this in the score as well. The interplay between the Athrobeth and the Baron and Luthien story, right? The way in which those two. It seems fairly clear to me that the Baron and Luthien story and the Athrobeth story are really meant to be in dialogue with each other. But of course, they're nowhere near each other. I mean, the Athrobeth is off in its like own random place, so it's kind of left to us to make those connections, right? But to really, it's been one of the delightful things, and I love how we basically use the Athrobeth almost as a framing mechanism for the Baron and Luthien story, right? By doing the Athrobeth, the primary Athrobeth action, right, between or non-action between Andreth and Aignor in the coming up to the end of last season. And then we return to it, at the end in the final episode of season 6. So again, it serves as a kind of frame mechanism for Baron and Luthien, and now the elf human thing, you catastrophically coming right there in the middle of it. So I love the fact that you're picking up on that and really kind of leaning into that connection so much, because that seems to me so important, such an essential part of the whole Baron and Luthien story, to really be thinking about those two things together. I think that's awesome.
I've also added some voices into that one as well, and I made the females take the elvish part and the males take the human part. I would love it if I'd collaborate with someone, if they could come up with some words for that, and we could actually get them sung in Sindar. Baron understands Sindar as well. If we could get some words, we could get some people to sing those and add that into that section there. That would be lovely.
That would be lovely. That would be. Well, let's keep moving through.
Yep.
So this is. Tell me when this is placed. Is this while she's in Hero Lorn?
So which one is this?
Sorry, Luthien Song of Love.
Luthien Song of Love. Yes. So this is the what you would call the escape from bondage scene.
Right.
But I'm going to add a bit of controversy here. And maybe we'll talk about the controversy afterwards. But Megan DeCenzo is back, our Luthien vocalist. She has sung this song for me, so many thanks to her. My feeling on this section is that this is Luthien's darkest hour, because she's imprisoned and she has no escape, and Burren is going to his death. She cannot see beyond this particular point. And I did talk about this in the music commissioning session, where I tried to emphasize the point that whenever we get a chance to lean into grief and sorrow, we need to, because it all builds onto it, all builds and builds and builds up to the final climax in episode 13. And this was the first time, because they're now separated, and he's going to die. Luthien, I could not see, given the situation, I could not see any way that Luthien could get out of this. And so in my mind, this would plunge her into the deepest despair at this time. And also, you did say in the recently, and you've always said that Muriel's death is a bad data point.
Yes, it's the bad data
It's such
point.
a bad data point. And we've never, and you talked about episode 13, where we get to episode 13, this is like, this just comes out of nowhere that Luthien can die in these circumstances. So I wanted to, and I also felt that some of the scenes didn't sort of lean into the right emotion. We needed to lean into deeper emotion, and put more on the line. Because and we'll talk more about this, but afterwards. But yeah. So this is my version of, she's in a really dark place. Now, I did take some elements. Rhiannon wrote the script for this one, and she did talk about this scene having Luthien singing about some of the great heroes, some of the great couple heroes in the past. So I have included that. But my feeling is that, even though she's encouraged by that, she still can't see beyond her present predicament.
Right. Okay. All right. Let's have a listen. By the way, Phil, Megan is with us here in the chat. So.
Oh, great!
Yeah. so she's.
Thank you,
she's
Megan.
Here. Our Luthien vocalist. Okay, here we go.
Dairon, play me a song.
When Baron peered through hemlock, I knew that he was there. It did not take me long to see his kind heart helping those in need. The Valar sent him here to me. Through the girdle he did stroll. I came to love him and he me. Our fates are twined, it is to be, I know. When Ose rebelled, born and broke his fall, Nessa and Tulkas, their passion says it all. Tillion's devotion to Orien will never end. Father has been blinded and bound us in the doom of Silmarillion, the dark foe. Now Baron has a task to do, a cruel task that is designed to win my hand. My heart's already won. Father's price will be his debt, and memory all that I have left. I will not live in grief. In grief I die.
I love I will not live in grief. Yeah, that's my favorite line. Um, tell me about what was happening musically at the end there in her last lines. I found that really powerful, and I'd love to hear you talk about that more.
Well, it was a very sparse score. It just has the lute and a flute. And the context that I put it in was that Dairon was playing. She asks, but he's outside. He can't hear what she's singing. But we've also established that Luthien can take control of instruments. So when it moves into the darker section, she takes control of the instrument, and Dairon picks up the flute. So that what wasn't actually shown. So at the end there, it's just a lot of it is just a continual run, just continual runs up. So it's in a minor key. It's very mysterious. Has that second note in there.
Right.
Second note, adding that tone of mystery to it. And the flute just has a little flutter at the end, but yeah, the lute just sort of continues with the same. As I said, the first verse is major. Actually, it changes to minor when she says, "Our fates are twined."
Right. Yes.
That's where everything changes. Our fates are twined together.
Yeah.
So
I was feeling
that.
I was feeling the shift to minor, and the sort of the general descending, trend of the melody there at the end, and it's when she talks about their fates being entwined.
Yes, yes, that's where it changes. She goes through the Ossian, Uinen, Nessa and Tolkis, Tilion and Arien. So I want to include those as being important icons and remembering those. But yeah, it had to have a very it had to sort of decline and almost sort of fade away at the very end. One thing that you may find interesting is that the flute part is Nienna's theme.
I missed that. Nice.
Well, it's a long time since I think anyone's listened to Nienna's theme, but I wanted to emphasize the grief and it's not the sorrow of the Eldar, it's not the grief of men, it's just grief. So in a way, this is where she's channeling Nienna, and Nienna is providing an avenue for her to express her grief, and her theme comes to the fore, or at least in the background there.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and thinking about that kind of sort of the pivot point being their fates being entwined there, and that's of course not only what is sort of leading her towards grief and through grief death in that moment, right? But also it's the thing that Thingol has totally failed to understand, right? The idea that he thinks he can get rid of Baron and then Luthien will be okay, right? Or he thinks he can keep them apart and that will solve something and again preserve her from danger, right? But he's not. The fact that they really are intertwined in that way already is the thing that he doesn't understand, and so that being the real pivot point, I think is great. Wonderful job, Megan. I loved it. That was beautiful.
It did, and I agree with you. The line "I will not live in grief" is to me was really crucial, and it raised the question. Well, what happens when a human experiences grief? We live with it. We live with grief. So it was that point that made me say, well, she can't live with it. So follow, and I think this will be an interesting conversation to have at another time, which is what is it about the psyche of elves that means that they cannot live in a state of grief? And you touched on this in episode script 13 discussion about it's wrapped up in their memory and how their memory works. And so that was the other important line was, and memory, all that I have left.
Right.
To emphasize that the grief is wrapped up in that memory and being all that she has. So
I know you said that some of your choices were, potentially controversial in the sense that they might not have aligned perfectly with other people were thinking, but I don't think that you went too far with the concept of grief and despair at this point in the story. As long as we're pointing to episode 13 and like foreshadowing where it's coming from and setting things up, I think we're all good. And some of the choices with the ambiguity of the words allowed for multiple interpretations. So how much of this is despair and how much is hope? I will not live with grief. Does that mean you're not going to grieve or you're not going to live?
Right, exactly. It could go either way. Yeah, agreed.
Right. So I feel
that's
like
what I liked about it. Yeah.
Yeah, you have put some things on the table, but not committed to Luthien is now like suicidal or something, right? So I feel like while you leaned hard in that direction, you didn't go too far with it.
Right. I think it's for a couple reasons, a perfectly valid thing to be showing her wrestling with in this moment, especially since, of course, it is a setup for episode 13, but it's going to correspond to her, her actual death of grief later on, right? And so
the fact that it happens now, in the tree, and she finally dies at the tree, and at that point Hiralorn is powerless to do anything to stop it. At this point, Hiralorn can set her free. But at that point in episode 13, Hiralorn is absolutely powerless, which will add more grief to that song when I get to write it.
And I think the really important thing that you've done in the ways that you've changed it from what we've talked about is take Luthien's perspective and make it personal, so that she is coming from her own experience, her depth of feeling, and just expositing what's inside of her. And I think that that's really important. So very well done.
Yeah, excellent.
This is actually a very busy episode. This is episode 5. I think we've got three songs in episode 5.
Yes. Yeah, because we have the song to Hiralorn as well, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're at the Silmaril poem now.
Hey, Evan.
All right.
Evan's up.
Yeah. Evan, tell me about the Silmaril poem.
We're going to step out of the subtle brushstrokes of Phil's work and into the heavy-handed, large swings of my own. This poem came about entirely by accident and through a misunderstanding on my part. In the episode 1 script, I had just come on to the writing team. And there's a section where Finrod is talking to a dwarf named Xerox, and they're discussing elven jewels and how they come to be, and the Silmarils come up. And there's this little paragraph that Finrod speaks, and Marie left a comment that just said, "More poetry needed," with periods. Me being the person I am, I took that extremely literally, and I wrote this poem. And I just put it in as a suggestion. And Marie very kindly pointed me in the correct direction and shared that material with Phil. And I had assumed that was as far as it would go. Later down the line, I had approached Phil about singing on various pieces this season. And one of the things that he had indicated to me was, if I wanted to take a crack at this, I could do that. So I spent a couple weeks playing around with it. And eventually what I sort of settled on was just me sitting with my guitar and sort of absent-mindedly picking away a little 3-chord progression. And that was my feeling behind this poem. Is it's almost absent-minded. Finrod sort of processing and expositing about the Silmarils, what they mean, from the perspective of someone who has lost a lot,
Right.
almost secondhand to the pursuit of the Silmarils. So that's sort of the context.
Great. Okay. All right. Let's listen.
The tongue will fail as waning light when to Silmaril thoughts turn, both doom and beauty woven tight and knit with flame that does not burn. The silver stars of Varda's head seem cold and dull when set beside, and bitterness and woe shan't stand where light and warmth and grace reside. Alas, if tears were shed by stone for fate and curse and iron crown, for light withheld on darkest throne, then all the world would surely drown.
Wow, Evan, that was awesome. Wow.
Thank you.
Wow.
One really important shout out is after I had written the first draft of the poem, Dylan on the script team came in and salvaged some semblance of a meter from what I had written and rewrote what I had done and vastly improved it. So huge kudos go to him for the work that he did on this piece.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool.
So yeah, this sort of got landed in my lap. So this is fantastic. It's a great poem. You guys wrote something that I could never write. Wonderful song, Evan. I didn't have time to get around to this was probably around the time that I was busy writing my musical paper for Osmoot. So I didn't have any time to invest. So Evan, once again, Evan just laid this song in my lap, and it was, wow, this is, and so we had to do a little bit of back and forth to work out, well, what's the context of it. We've early on we worked out that it was from Finrod's point of view. So, okay, Finrod's point of view, how does that fit into the story? So I messaged Nick back and forth. Well, what important scenes does Finrod have? And we landed in episode 5 when Beren goes to Nargothrond and requests his help. So then when we had a context, it was like, okay, so what is Finrod grappling with at this time? Oh, he's got Beren there. He's got Curufin and Curina there as well. There's a whole lot of stuff going down. What he has to decide what to do. So we put it in that frame. This is, and how it ended up is that this song becomes the crisis point, the crisis point for this episode. So there are 2 crisis points. The one in Nargothrond, where Finrod makes his decision to support Beren, and also in Luthien's story and her escape. So we've done Luthien with Huralorn. We've gone over to Nargothrond. We're seeing what's going down there. So that was the frame that I had to sort of put it in. So I linked it so closely with the Oath of Feanor because, and even though this was the biggest criticism that I got on YouTube, was Finrod didn't swear the oath. Yeah, I know. Okay, can you just ratchet it down a little bit, please? Yes, that is true, but it was a consideration. It was a huge consideration. He had the 2 brothers under his roof.
Finrod did in fact swear an oath, which is what his dilemma is at this point, is that he's got his own oath and the oath of the Sons of Feanor. Yeah.
Exactly. So we've tried to weigh up the 2, and yeah, Evan, it just sort of, with your conversation with you and with other people, it sort of really fit into this time where Finrod is grappling with all of the issues. Now what I've done once again I've sort of departed in the next one, the next one, because Finrod's dilemma is actually the full cinematic version of Evan's song, and Evan is now our Finrod vocalist. So Evan will be coming back next season for the song battle.
Excellent.
Sorry, later on for the song battle.
Excellent. So this gets put into episode 5. So we're gonna get the Huralorn song and this in the same episode. Wow.
Yep. Wow. But Finrod doesn't sing it. It's just something that plays. It's a little bit like Arwen's song that's played in the Houses of Healing in the Return of the King. It's that kind of music. It's just playing in the background, but you know that something's going on. He's grappling with these issues, and the song is a representation of what those issues are.
Yeah, very cool. Neat. Okay, let's keep moving because I know we're getting getting later and later. So as we were wont to do
that we had last time.
Exactly, I know exactly. Okay, let's listen to Finrod's dilemma. Well, actually, no, wait. First, I know you've done a little bit of setting up of Finrod's dilemma. Anything further that you want to say to contextualize it before we listen?
Starts with the fall. You wanted the fall, starts with the fall.
Start with the fall. All right, let's listen.
The tongue will fail was waning light, when to a Silmaril thoughts turn, both doom and beauty woven tight, and knit with flame that does not burn. The silver stars of Vana's hand seem cold and dull when set beside, and bitterness and woe shall stand where light and warmth and grace reside. Alas, if tears were shed by stone, for fate and curse and iron crown, for light withheld on darkest throne, then all the world would surely drown.
Okay, so that's how it gets set in episode 5. Wow.
Yep. There's a scene where Finrod has had everyone's ear, and then he goes into his rooms alone, and we'll be playing over that. And he could tinkle on his lyre or harp while he's at it, if we wanted him to do that. But really, as you see, musically, I've made like it builds to a crescendo, like it's purely internal, with that middle bridge section there, where you see all those images flashing with the oath, the kinslaying, the burning of the ships, the oath to Barahir, Beren turning up. They're all flashes of scenes that we've seen before, and at that point he makes up his mind. And I take it as being the final line, which I think is unless the world drowns. So my interpretation is he's not going to let the world drown. He's going to do the right thing. Like his mind's made up by that stage, and that's why I cut straight to the scene with him taking the crown off, because after he's made that decision, we don't need anything else. We need, okay, let's action that decision.
Right. Yeah. Tell me about that building almost sort of chaotic crescendo in the bridge there in the middle. I'd love to hear more about that. You were talking about that some just now, I know, Phil, but it's just like musically, how all of that was kind of coming together there at the same time.
Okay, so we've got the same sort of a chord structure as the Oath of Fëanor, and it started with the Oath of Fëanor. There was six vocal parts because we've lost one son already. We've dropped one vocal part out in this version of it. So the middle section, yes, exactly. So this middle section has a few things going on there. We've got a couple of instruments that continue to play the song that Evan was singing. So a couple of instruments picking up the melody line, da 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 da. So we've got that going. We've got the chords going in the background, which I multi-tracked harmonies there, and it's the same as the Oath of Feanor chords. And then on top of that, you might have recognized the Morgoth's Triad is playing in the background, and that gets louder and louder and louder and builds, and that's one large part of the building of that section. Because Morgoth is in the background of all of this. He's not just thinking about these two things, he's also thinking about the Dark Lord.
Yes,
inescapably.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was
yeah. And I think I had starting off with double basses, contrabasses, then cellos coming in, then violins coming in, then second violins coming in, then and by the time we get to the first and second violins, they're just going bump, bump, bump. They're just adding emphasis to it rather than the others are doing the bum 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 bum, and with more and more instruments adding in volume until they're triple F. I'm looking at the score. They're triple F by the time they get to that last bit.
Right.
I just love how well Phil, your orchestration on this piece lends to expanding the scope of what this quest means. Because it's easy to get sort of zeroed in on Baron and Luthien and it's their love story, and the fact that it's a Silmaril is just circumstantial. But then to really expand that and say, no, there's so much more, there's so much history that's coming from this. I really, really loved getting to participate in this.
No,
one of the things, go ahead, Phil.
And I must say, thank you, Evan, because this song is now had the second highest number of views apart from the Oath of Feanor. So the Oath of Feanor is up to 27,000 views, and this one is,
including Bear McCreary.
This one is 6.3 thousand views.
Yeah.
So that is absolutely fantastic. And there's been really good engagement with the Tolkien community on this one as well. I think they really appreciate the lyrical nature of the song, and the vocals as well. But yeah, it's had a lot of good engagement. So thank you, Evan, for such a gift.
And thank you to all 37 people who watched it all the way through.
No, more people than that watched this one all the way through.
But no, it was I one of the things that I was really loving there. It was one of those things where I'm like, I have to listen to this several more times. But the interplay, taking the Silmaril poem that you wrote, Evan, and then juxtaposing it with the Oath of Feanor was really amazing. Like that was really powerful, and that's like the bit I need to listen to and think about a lot more. Both how the sense of doom that it gives. I mean, both of them really were sort of influencing the other when you take those two things together, right? Both the Oath of Feanor was kind of casting a little bit of a pall right over the Silmaril poem, which when taken on its own, like we were just listening to it before, doesn't have that sense of doom, that the Oath of Feanor does. And yet also the Oath of Feanor sounds different, feels different in the context when juxtaposed with your Silmaril poem there, because it's so easy for at least I find it's so easy when thinking about Feanor generally and the Oath of Feanor in particular to focus entirely on the possessiveness, on the sort of the attitude of Feanor, and away from the thing that he's focused on, right? Like that, which is, doesn't fully justify it, but is like legitimately, arresting in these ways. Anyway, as I say, I find both of them really informing each other in really interesting ways. So that was one of the things that I was really excited about with hearing this.
Another musical thing about this is that it had to feel very intimate, because this is Finrod and his innermost thoughts about his situation. So the bits during the verses is a string quartet. So it's really two violins, a viola, and a cello, plus the harp. And that, in a way, the harp is also representative of Finrod's voice. So I wanted to bring that intimacy of having a really small number of instruments. But when we get to the bridge section, the full orchestra comes in, particularly with Morgoth's triad. I think I've added all the strings in, but then it pairs back down to just the quartet for the final section.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Excellent. Okay, well let's we're on to Luthien's magic spell is next. This is the hair growth spell. So this is again episode 5.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
In the fully musical episode 5.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Now this one musically, the thing that I'm grappling with is, how do I not turn season 6 into a musical? And we talked about that in the music. And so the
question really is, how hard do you try? Like it's.
So in this one, the music is completely magical. So we're not relying on Dairon down there. I think there's a scene where he leaves the stringed instrument leaning against the wall. So that we can see the strings plucking of that during this, but all of the other instruments. So there's Celeste, which is John Williams' favorite instrument for Harry Potter, like the Harry Potter theme. Da 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 da. That's a Celeste. So we're talking about all of these instruments: glockenspiel, harp, which have a lot of baggage with them anyway, and that is that they are readily associated with magic in our musical worlds already. So entirely magical. And so once again, this tells the entire story. So the end bit is truncated and would not be how the actual episode would play out, but for the purposes of this, we needed to get Luthien out of the treehouse and out of Doriath.
Okay.
So that's how far it goes.
So in fact, the last 4 numbers that we've been listening to are all from episode 5. just to clarify.
Yeah. I think actually, I must admit, I think Alana called me up and said she was writing the script for episode 5. And so we talked and chatted and collaborated. So a lot of these ideas came to me during that chat. So that's probably why this episode is.
That's wonderful. Heavy. That's wonderful. All right, let's listen to Luthien's magic song.
Once again, Megan.
Water drawn at midnight in a silver bowl. Not a word is spoken on the way. La 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 la, la 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 la. Wine brought night at noontide cat to hound, babe to lass. Instant virtue of all of the greatest in order that will flow and grow. The beards of angels, the tail of cockerel, the body of Valar, the blood beloved Everlord, the sword of man, the chain of Engainu, the neck of giant Gillen, and the long flowing tresses of Orin, and all the nurses of La 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 la, 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 la
Well, I would agree with Gerard Curry there. That, Megan, that did sound like a really difficult song to sing. You did a beautiful job with that. It sounded very, very challenging. I love, so the lyrics are basically straight out of the Tale of Tinuviel in the Book of Lost Tales, right?
Yes.
Kind of love the fact that all of the like totally inexplicable references, like the giant of Gillim and all that stuff, are still there.
Right. Adds depth to the world. All these
it does.
That we
It
don't
does.
know about.
It's sort of like being like, okay, internet chat boards, like, go to work, figure out what the heck this means, because we don't even know. Nobody knows. Yeah, no, that was fun. That was that was fun. Was it? I mean, that sounded like most or all of it. The actual spell, from the Tale of Tinuviel. That is, was the whole thing?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it was. It was pretty much taken. Just a few sort of minor changes to make it fit with the timing, correct. But yeah, I wanted to get across sort of all of the elements that went into it. So probably and I know that the storyboard that Catherine did had lots of time spent with her actually weaving. So that was basically covered by the la 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 sections, right. And so she would just la 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 her way through most of those scenes
through the weaving montage. Yeah.
Very, very much a montage. We don't need too much weaving to be actually shown.
Right. The goal was to portray magic. So
yeah. Yes, exactly. So there's a lot of reverb on her voice as well, and I've added them in various degrees. Probably I might have gone a bit overboard with the final one there. But it was and there was one section in that middle section which I think I came up with myself, instill virtue from all living creatures, mm-hmm. and related to her, and little mention there of foreshadowing of Huan's involvement, pup to hound,
right, the dog reference,
babe to lass. So I just wanted to put that reference in there as a little Easter egg, but I think that was the only part that I added. But I wanted to get across everything that went into making this spell, and that it was sort of an enchantment and needed magical ingredients to actually go into it. Yeah, I didn't really show a lot of time with the actual hair growing, and I think the hair growing and the cutting and the weaving, and then could be done in like 10 seconds or something like that. Can be done in a very short amount of time.
Right.
But as I said, the instrumentation is right up there in the high registers. Use violin harmonics as well. I quite like that. But it's when the violin player doesn't press down the string all the way to the board, but they actually put their finger on it lightly, and it gives a really high pitched. It is a much harsher sound. It is the same note. It is the same note, but it has a definite quality to it. Let's say.
Right.
So you often get that in like, it's a mysterious scene. You'll get just the one note, the high pitch.
Right.
So I've used those, and just a lot of little sort of moving around of the notes, in that there aren't Luthians doing big jumps, the la 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 la, but the notes are just, by the instruments, are just sort of moving around a little bit, just to get the feeling of there's a lot of intricacy going on here in this spell, in what's happening in front of us.
Right.
And yes,
Very
thank you, Megan. I know that was an extremely challenging song. Well, I didn't make it as challenging as it could have been.
That's right. I could have made it. Okay, it could have been worse. Yeah, it could have been harder. That's cool. Yeah, Megan, that was wonderful. That was delightful.
Yeah, and in the middle section, I tried to get across that there was an exertion of power going on here, and that was where we had the lower stringed instruments come in, and it got higher in volume. The volume increased during that bit, and also Megan gave me 2 takes. So Megan, that bit actually has both of your takes in it. So to sort of, once again, to get across the idea that there's a real exertion of power going on at this point.
Right. Excellent.
And the other thing, we've channeled a Valar. Did you see at the very end there? There was very short. There was a picture of Este the Gentle.
Oh, right.
So she's channeling Este's power of sleep. Into this.
Yeah.
So, and this is how I envisage the magic working. Is that it is that connection to that higher power, and it is channeling that power into what they're actually doing. And that's their ability. Humans don't have the ability to touch the Valar, but I believe that the elves do.
Well, of course, by doing this through musical themes, right? I mean, it's almost like an explicit interpretive move, right? I mean, the music of the Ainur established the world, right? And the song of Este is the song of sleep. Like, that's the element of the world as it's woven from the song. So the idea of touching on the Este theme being something almost like the mechanism of how the magic works.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, it's one of those things that just works in a really beautiful and totally nonverbal way, in that way, which I think is really awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
And which is probably a good segue into Finrod's disguise spell, which musically is very similar to, and happens in the next episode. So this one happens in the following episode after they have.
So we've moved beyond episode 5.
Yeah, we're moving on to episode 5. Maybe episode 6.
It's up to 6 now. Right.
And what you'll find with this one, and Evan did the vocals for this again. Once again, the music is magically created. There is no orchestra backing. It doesn't. It doesn't arrive with the Welsh Police and the Harry Orchestra in time to sing a love song. So that doesn't happen at all. This is purely magical music that is backing Finrod as he is doing his orc disguise spell. And you will hear very strong similarities between what he sings and what we've just heard Luthians sing. So in my mind, they were doing very similar things. It's to do with disguise. It's to do, and Luthien is channeling the power of Este. Finrod is channeling a different Valar's power. See if you can pick it.
Okay. All right.
Cloud the eyes from seeing, stop the ears from hearing, dim the minds perceiving as we pass. Cloud the eyes from seeing, stop the ears from hearing, dim the minds perceiving as we pass. Fair to foul be our outward appearance, foul to fair will our true selves be hid. We will walk among them, hearts will not be shaken, servants of the dark foe. We will walk among them, hearts will not be shaken, servants of the dark foe we will see.
That was a really interesting effect there at the end. The end is the end is the sort of the moment when the magic is sort of taking effect visually.
Probably earlier than that, but I wanted to get across there are multiple voices there, so I've come in and loaned vocals to that section as well to give you the impression that at that point it's not just Finrod who is exerting power, but his companions, and there are 10 other elves there. They all have magical abilities, so they're loaning their voices to the spell and reinforcing it with it's sort of like a meta concert, a mental meta concert. If anyone's familiar with that term from Julian May, so that was what I was trying to get across. It's sort of reinforced. There are lots of voices holding this spell in place as they travel. Did anyone pick the Valar? And this is related to your conversation with Nick on this episode, and what is actually happening at this moment, and the fact that they haven't actually changed into orcs.
Right.
And the words lend hints as to what is actually happening. Cloud the eyes from seeing, dim the ears from hearing, dim the so it's all talking about the senses of the people who are experiencing them, not
Right.
them themselves. If the spell is happening to the other people,
To other
sort of like
people.
a bubble as they go through this
Right.
bubble surrounding them.
Right.
And so the Valar, who is most to do with showing people things that aren't really there.
Elmo.
Yay!
Which is a beautiful correspondence to Este in Luthien's song.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, in the background, I think the clarinet is playing ba 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 da 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 da. So it's all playing all the way through the background. So this is what this spell is doing. It's not affecting them, because there is that scene where Beren looks down and looks at himself and says, "Is this working?" And
Right.
say, yes, it is working. It's affecting the orcs that we are going to come across. They are not going to see something different to what is really here.
Right. Yeah, and as Megan was pointing out, that really loving how similar the melody is to Luthien's song. You can really hear that. Though I like how how it drops into, or sort of shifts into, like more and more dissonant intervals and things at the end as you're as the words are talking about the servants of Morgoth and the shift from fair to foul, it then inserts a good deal more dissonance into the melody.
Yeah, I think I have used a lot of clashing notes there, sort of first and second notes, which are right next to each other. And once again, lots of violin string harmonics. I think all of the first, second violins and violas are doing harmonics to give it that otherworldly, creepy feeling. The harp is just doing a bum 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 just all the way through. So once again, it gives that feeling of there's something intricate is happening here this time. And once again, when the power comes in, we get the deeper instruments lending their voices to get across the idea that something powerful is happening there.
Yeah. I like the idea of the way, as you said at the end, it's kind of getting passed on to the other voice, to like the multiple voices coming at the end, sort of indicating that like their own wills are involved also in kind of maintaining that as well. And it's a neat effect. Again, just another wonderful way to kind of suggest something, right? That we don't have to talk about or say anything about, right, in the actual script.
That's right. So there is one final one, but before we go on to that, I just wanted to say that's as far as I had progressed through the season. As I said, I was very busy before Christmas and December and January with writing my Osmoot presentation, which took up a lot of time, and so the collaboration has continued. I've worked closely with Alana. Alana and I have pretty much mapped out the song battle, and so the song battle we've sort of worked out the timing and the meter. So I've just got to write a song. That's really all.
I was just gonna point out that basically when you're talking about your Osmoot presentation, you're saying like, it took me a little while to compose the Ainulindale, right? So I had to, it's no shock there.
It wasn't all of the Ainulindale.
I know it wasn't the whole Ainulindale. I know.
And I don't think I'll put that up on YouTube until sort of I'm closer to publishing the second half. But pretty much it was everything up to the music is about to begin. And as I said at the time, most commentators totally ignore or almost totally ignore those first 3 to 4 paragraphs, and they just leap straight into, hey, we're into the music, when a lot of significant stuff happened before then. But I just wanted to say, that's the last of my pieces. I will continue to work on the song battle. I'll continue to work on and collaborate with Alana, with Dylan, who's working on other things, including the song before Mandos, Luthien's song before Morgoth. We've got Dairon's song in the wilderness. Burren's song in the wilderness, which thank you, Nick, for putting in my request that it be sung by Dairon and have that comparison between the two. So I'm really I saw that.
Loved that juxtaposition in the episode. I
thought that as being a really important musical part of that. So I will still continue to work on those things, and happy to come back during season 7. And we do need those filler episodes to allow the script team as much time as they need to write, because they've been doing even more work than me, I reckon.
I'm sure we will have occasions where we can do 1 or maybe even 2 more music episodes, because there is a really very, very great deal of music in season 6. Wonderful. Well, this has been great. I mean, Phil, I just think, of course, in some part, I mean, I was just going to say. I mean, I think that the work that you've done here for season 6 is really the best that we've seen in some film so far. It's kind of, as I say, there's sort of an advantage that you have, right? Because you're able to build off all of the, before we were, you were kind of establishing individual elements, right? It was, for the first couple seasons, it was like, listen to this cool theme, right? But now we're really being able to take advantage of that and weave this stuff together as you've been doing, and I think that's it's just delightful. So, yeah, it would be fun. I look forward to the day. And I don't know when it would be able to happen, when we can have like a scored reading of an episode, right? I mean, come on, that would be amazing to be able to have a full score behind a reading of an episode. Yeah.
Yep,
that would be
we will
good.
aim for that. We will aim for that. But yeah, in the meantime, our final song is a contribution from Evan, and this is looking forward. This is looking forward to the end of season 6. So that's why I wanted to present it here. It's a demo that Evan put up. I think it's wonderful, and it would be a perfect song for end credits. And I think that would be worthwhile working towards. We could actually put like a full cast list in end credits, full cast list. Exactly, like who's in charge of special effects.
I thought about it when I was putting
so,
the video together. I was very tempted to do a kind of a scroll. Yeah.
No, we will do that. So this is just a demo. We'll take it away and work on it. And Megan, we would love you to sing this, because it is from Luthien's point of view, and this would be the final song as the credits roll at the end of episode 13 of season 6, sung by Luthien. So we'll work on that. We'll get it orchestrated and get Megan to sing it, and it will be fantastic.
Excellent. Evan, anything you want to give as context for this before we listen?
Sure. This started as in the episode 13 script, Nick sort of threw out this song that was not included in any of our discussions, and just like a loaded hand grenade, just tossed it right in our laps. And this was my first crack at that piece and trying to put some words into that. And as I sort of wrote it, was writing it, it started to feel less like words that Luthien was saying herself in that moment. It didn't feel right. It felt too contemporary, and it felt too personal to me. And so it sort of then transitioned into, this is just me sort of taking bits from 3 specific stages of Baron and Luthien's story, and sort of putting them all into one contemporary piece. So
excellent. All right, let's listen.
So many days under the tree, following me as your feet would allow. Riding so slow, calling so sweet. Our love song written on every bough. Dance with me. Oh, dance. passing through the dark, hid from sky and stars. Oh, but overcome by the shadow closing in. Evil like a weight within my heart. Our love shines bright among the dim. Stay with me. Oh, oh. Stay with me. Oh, oh. Love of my days, lying in my arms. The way that you've gone, hidden from my eyes. Just a moment, and I'm ripped apart. How can one endure when the heart has died? Wait for me. Oh, oh. Wait for me. Wait for me. Oh.
I love that as an end credits song. I love the 3-part movement of this. The thing that I find so powerful about the overall shape of this song as it's written is that it moves, on the one hand, it starts in sweetness and daytime, right, in the first stanza, and then it descends into evil and darkness and the weight and the dim, right, and you kind of think it's going to come out of that, right, back into the light at the end, but instead it gets darker, right, and yet overlaid with that in the end is the deeper hope of the wait for me, right? I mean, and so in that way it really follows. I think of like Sam's characterization of it, right? Like the journey into darkness and beyond, right? Which is different. Darkness and beyond is different from like darkness and then back into light, right? It's that sense of the juxtaposition of grief. I mean, the words of the last verse are all of grief, right? As I said, it's like bright to dim to dark. But wait for me, right? And the way in which that phrase is freighted with the hope of the end of the escape, from bondage, but without losing a bit of the grief, right, is really powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This was really, really fun for me to write. And I think why it felt more like an end credit song than an actual in the story piece is because all of these verses are pieces of the script. They're moments from the scripts that we've all, read together and edited together. And specifically the verse 2 is from a moment in Katrin's episode 10 script where Baron and Luthien are descending into Angband and they just sit and hold each other for a minute. And that was so powerful of a moment to me that it sort of defined the rest of the piece. And my typical style would be light to dark to light. What was fascinating to me as I sort of wrote that third verse was that as I expected it to come back into hope, so did Luthien. And that's why it's such a powerful movement, is because that was supposed to be the happy ending, but it's not.
Right.
And then to kind of let the wait for me feel like a genuine outcry of, that's all that I have left. This is the only next step. So yeah, this was a fun one.
It even captures, in a sense, there's something, I mean, we talked about this, at various points in the episodes, but there's a sense in which the Baron and Luthien story always feels unresolved because we don't really get to see what it means, right? We don't, like, we're told some things about what happened and we can see, but we don't, the way in which Baron and Luthien, she makes her choice, they are brought back to Middle-earth and we never see him again. Right? We, like all other mortals, never speak with Baron again. And so the way that you've ended that with the question, how can one endure when the heart has died? A question which isn't answered, right? The song doesn't end, just as the song doesn't emerge out of the darkness. It's, light to dim to dark. It asks the question, right? And even the way that the wait for me, again, invokes those things without giving the answer, right? Is I get that in that way that felt very very similar to that kind of movement at the end of this. It's not that he's trying to leave it vague. It's not that exactly he's trying to, but we don't get to experience the ending in the same way that we've experienced the whole story up through there. And so there is that sense in which we're kind of left with a question, just as I think, I mean, as we talked about at the very beginning, it seems to me that in one sense, the question of, like, in what sense is this story ultimately, like, along the way, sure, you can see how escape from bondage is a motif right throughout the whole thing, but in what sense is, at the end of the day, the story of Baron and Luthien the story that you would say this is the story of escape from bondage? How? And I think that Tolkien has kind of left that to us in some really powerful way. Tolkien is often very willing to not spell stuff out, right? And just to leave that there. But the way that he does that, I think, in such a powerful way with the ending, or sort of the non-ending of this story, which is like the central core story of the whole legendarium, right? Is really, anyway, what I'm saying is I think that the end of your song really, 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 well, it's hard to say captures that, because, like, captures the thing that can't be captured, like, but really kind of pushes us in that same direction at the end, and I think that's really effective.
It's on theme.
Musically, it's unresolved as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we don't go back to the one. I feel very similarly to you, Phil, about resolutions. And in this song, there is so much story that happens after this song ends. But the reason why I don't go into a verse 4 is because this is all that Luthien was banking on. This was all she knew for sure, was just wait for me. I don't know what happens next, but just wait for me. And so to just leave it on that 4 was, it felt right.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
artists, we're going to need artists. I'm envisaging end of Return of the King, like a sketch of each person that we've cast dressed as the character. This is big.
And we'll do the
This is
credits
big.
roll. Yeah.
That's right, and all we need is little sketches of scenes. So for the middle verse, because it's dark, they can all be scenes of Angband. Like the first one can be, the background can be Doriath, then Angband, then the forest and the dead wolf for the final verse.
Yeah.
So artists, we're gonna need artists for this. This is a big thing.
For sure. That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. This has been so wonderful. Not just this episode, but of course this whole season as well. Always so much fun to talk about music. Phil, I feel like it's a special treat that we get to look forward to the fact that we're like not even actually halfway through the season as far as the music is concerned. So there is much more to come, and that's really exciting to think about. Evan, thank you so much for your contributions. Loved your singing, loved your songs. These are really a marvelous contribution. So thanks so much for that. So looking forward to more of that. Thanks to everybody who has contributed, our wonderful script team, our wonderful artists, and everybody else who has come together to make Film such a wonderful project. It has been so delightful to see this project grow over the years, and I will be excited to see what comes next as we move forward into season 7. Now we're going to take a break between now and then. There's some things we're going to be adjusting and kind of thinking through as we're doing. We're going to kind of be transitioning some things and stuff. But so we're looking at September, somewhere around Bilbo's birthday, for the beginning of season 7 is what we're planning on. So we will we'll have a party of special magnificence for session 1 of season 7, probably around the appropriate time of the year. September 21st is the date we are eyeing for that. There's a chance that might change, but that's the date that we're eyeing at this point. So looking forward to that, because I mean, hey, who's not excited to get right to the Near Ninth Arnoidiad, right? So this is what we've all been looking forward to, I think. Anyway, it's going to be awesome. So thanks everybody. Special thanks to Nick and Marie for all the work. Marie does all of our slides and all of our planning. Marie's the one who really makes this whole thing run and operate. So thank you so much, Marie, for the work that you do in keeping everything running.
Well, I certainly didn't do anything for this session. So thank you guys for giving me a break. But
you made the PowerPoint fancy.
You did make the PowerPoint.
Partially. He mostly made it. I just kind of cleaned it up a little.
You sent me the Zoom link so good.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is what, as I say, she makes everything work. Like, this is what we.
But no, thank you. Obviously, it's my pleasure to be part of this. And
and me as well. I mean, this is. I sometimes think that I may not have started to write music if it wasn't for the Film project. And I'm growing so much in my musical compositions, and I'm happy to produce music that people like to listen to, and this will keep me in business till the end of my days.
I think so. I think we can pretty much all say that. I think.
Say, that is definitely your long-term projects, Corey, is keeping us all occupied forever and ever.
That's on the season 6 wrap t-shirts, right?
That's it. Yep. Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks again for this episode. Thanks for season 6, and another wonderful time talking about the Silmarillion. Looking forward to the Near Ninth Arnoidiad next year in a couple months. And I will say, as always, thanks for listening and Godspeed.